Happy Halloween and welcome to the CS Week 311 Synergy Group Best Practice Sharing webinar. Along with our research partner, ICMA, we're presenting today what is 311 and how do we get started. And because it's Halloween, we're going to make it less scary instead of more scary. Welcome, my name is Rose Minton and I'm the co-founder of the 311 Synergy Group and I'm the founder of Heights Consulting. I'll be your moderator as well as your speaker today. But let's start out by talking about 311 and what that is, the Synergy Group. It's an industry networking group. We get together to network, share information, have a little bit of fun at our yearly conference, but we also communicate with one another on LinkedIn, communicating by discussion forums, questions and answers, and it's a great way to get information from other people. Please join us on LinkedIn, and we're currently led by Andy Maimoni from San Francisco 311, and our vice chair this year is Esther Tenenbaum. She's the division manager at the City of Albuquerque. The Synergy Group invites you to our next annual meeting. It's going to be down in Tampa. We're already building that agenda. Esther is our planning chair this year, and we're going to have 2.5 full days of discussion, information exchange, and a best practice tour to a non-municipality to learn about call centers and how they do it in the private sector. Our webinars have been scheduled for the last Wednesday of every month, but we're making a change to accommodate the holiday. So instead of doing the last week of November after Thanksgiving or the last week of December, which hits right around Christmas, we'll be doing December the 12th. 10 o'clock Central. And again, we use LinkedIn as our communications forum, so please join us on LinkedIn. And the questions that we don't get to after this presentation, we'll also be posting those on LinkedIn. In order to ask a question, if you'll look at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there's a question and answer panel. And if you'll submit those questions, Cory and I will be answering those at the end of the presentation. So I've introduced myself as the speaker, and I'm presenting with Cory Fleming. She's the 311 CRM Program Director at ICMA. And Cory and I actually put this presentation together and gave a more robust version of it at the ICMA conference. We cut it down a little bit for these purposes so that we'd have plenty of time for your questions at the end. So let's get rolling with the presentation. What is 311 and how does it work? Who has 311? Why are local governments using 311? And finally, some hints, some steps for implementing 311. So that's our agenda today. And the first thing is, what the heck is 311? Well, first let's cover off on a few terms. So a system is actually everything that encompasses centralized customer service. The people, the processes, the technology, in some cases the facility for connecting governments with the constituents. 311 actually just refers to the phone number and related customer service communication methods. So 311 could be a lot more than the number that you're dialing. And finally, the supporting software is called Customer Relationship Management, CRM, and so you'll hear that term. The technology is an enabler of centralized customer service, 311. So is it about the number? Not really. You can have centralized customer service and create a centralized customer service environment, whether you use a 3-digit number, 311, or 7-digit or 10-digit dialing where you're at. And the source of this information is the Minneapolis 311 Comparative Survey, the results from 2011. And by the way, that survey has just been conducted this year in cooperation with the 311 Synergy Group, and those results for the 2012 survey will be presented in February on a webinar. And also, it'll have a session at the meeting in April in Tampa. So lots of good information from that comparative survey, and you must participate in order to receive the full results of that survey. So here are the key elements and the integration points of the customer relationship management. This is the software that I'm talking about. So you see the software is pretty robust. It contains a knowledge base so that you can look up information to provide to your citizens. Also, service request initiation, routing, and tracking. It's helpful to know who initiated it, where it is in the process, and finally when it's closed and what the result was. A lot of data is captured, and you can do a lot of reporting and analytics out of that data capturing, as you can see on the bullets on the right-hand side. It supports the call or contact center, as well as self-service, data integration with other software that you might have in your city. Data warehouse software, for instance, would be a part of that overall system. Also, address matching and verification. I talked about reporting and business analytics, and cashiering and GIS modules could integrate to a CRM as well. So we talked about the various methods that the citizen can use to contact the city. It doesn't have to just be a call. It could be walk-in, web chats, email, text, mobile applications, social media. Some of the 311 centers are very much into social media these days, as well as customer self-serve through the telephone and through the web. And the reason that we're going through all of these is that one size does not fit all. It's just like when you go out to buy a car these days. We all don't buy the same car. We all look at very different options. Well, it's the same when you're creating centralized customer service. You're reacting to what your leadership thinks that your constituents are asking for. It's the results of citizen feedback, and it's the results of a lot of planning and focusing the different actions based on those plans. So for instance, mobile apps, a lot of communities, including Redlands, California, use those. Online request systems are used up in Saco, Maine. Internal services, Minneapolis is using it for building services. You have a light bulb burnt out, you use 311 to issue that service request. Also, they're supporting their legal department at Minneapolis, so they've progressed just beyond citizen contact. And then San Francisco, California, very comprehensive in what their 311 does, including a lot of robust social media associated with that.
So this is Cory, and I'll jump in now here and talk a little bit about why local governments are using 311. Let's talk first about the benefits of local government to local government. The wonderful thing about, and Rose, could we move on to the next slide? Thank you. One of the things that I find really wonderful about these centralized customer service systems is that they provide a level of tracking and reporting that provides greater accountability. You don't have to rely on pink slips and maybe those getting lost or people missing their voicemail messages because you have this central system where all of the service requests and information requests are being recorded. So you have that information at hand and can pull it up when you need it. I think a lot of the 311 systems and other centralized customer service systems are resulting in greater cost savings over time and definitely greater efficiencies. In Minneapolis, they reduced the amount of time to respond to graffiti complaints from 2 or 3 weeks to 2 or 3 days by taking a look at how their business processes were working and revamping those so that they can get things done in a more timely fashion. I think that 311 CRM systems, when you start to look at the data that's generated by these systems, can be a wonderful tool for cross-training your department so that people aren't working in silos so much, but rather looking at the data and thinking about what's actually happening in the community and how they can work together to improve the community as a whole. Obviously, you want to stay true to your mission, but I think in staying true to your mission, you can also work with other departments to have a greater impact in the community. Over the last few years, we have had we've been dealing with the effects of the Great Recession, and so some service levels have been reduced as a result of that. But as we begin the growth phase, again, the demand for our services from local government is only going to continue to increase, and I think a centralized customer service can really help local governments respond to that demand. And then lastly, I think it broadens and deepens citizen engagement. Citizens know where they can go for local government customer service, where they need to interact, and so they connect better with their local governments because they're not playing a guessing game of going through the blue pages and trying to figure out who they need to talk to for what particular issue. Next slide, please. On the citizen side of the equation, it's a huge time saver. ICMA has done lots of case studies in our work, and as part of that work, we've interviewed a number of citizens, and once citizens have access to a 311 system or another type of centralized customer service, they really don't want to give it up. They love the service because it takes time, it saves them time and makes their lives easier. And in part because that's an easy-to-remember number, it provides them just that single point of contact for solving problems. Just as we talked about that there's a tracking system for local governments to use, citizens also have an ability to track what's happening with a service request. And if something's not done, they can call back and refer to that service request. Centralized customer services also help people know when the work will be done. They manage expectations. So if you call in and using the famous pothole example, the call agent tells you, well, ma'am, it's going to be 72 hours. You know that the work maybe won't be done right that day and that you don't need to call back every day in order to make sure that the work does get done. For citizen activists, 311 and CRM systems provide new data to help understand what's happening in the neighborhood, what kind of service requests are coming in, where are they coming in, what time of day are they coming in. It's all wonderful new data to think about what's happening in the neighborhood and how you can make the neighborhood improve the quality of life in the neighborhood. And lastly, just as local governments can use this for greater citizen engagement, citizens can use this to engage with their local government more. On the citizen engagement front, just want to talk about a few examples of how systems have been using it to deepen and broaden citizen engagement. In the city of Philadelphia, one of the things they did, they had to make budget cuts, as many of us did, back in 2008, 2009. And they used their system to take that information in from citizens. The mayor put out, okay, what services are most important to you and what services could we cut back in? And so the Philly 311 then took those responses in from citizens. It became a wonderful gathering tool on what citizens were wanting during that time period. In Cupertino, California, they use Access Cupertino to train their neighborhood block leaders so that the neighborhood block leaders have a better understanding of local government and where they need to go and can help take requests in when they're at neighborhood meetings.
Also, performance measurement and management is a wonderful outcome of centralized customer service and the tracking that's done through a CRM. CityStat was pioneered by Baltimore. It is a process where the departments are measured based on the service level agreements that they have agreed to in terms of how long it takes to get a service request worked for the citizen, and they report in up to and including to the mayor's level about how each department is doing versus their service level agreements. Chicago, Illinois, if you go out to their 311 website, you can click on performance measures for call center service delivery. A host of different performance measures are out there for the citizens to review and see how Chicago is responding to service requests. And a Six Sigma effort in Indianapolis, Marion County is also a wonderful example of how performance measurement and management is being used as a result of centralizing customer service and having a CRM that can measure these outcomes.
Yeah. On the budgeting and resource allocation front, I want to cover a few examples here of how local governments are using it. And I'm going to go back to Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, they have 4 quadrants for code enforcement, so 4 different areas that are responding to the code enforcement service requests that are coming in there. And one of those quadrants always seemed to take longer to respond to all of their service requests that were coming in. And so the city decided to do a little bit more digging. And as Rose pointed out earlier, a lot of these systems have a GIS capability that allows you to look at things in a spatial and locational way. And so that's what Minneapolis did. And they looked at their 4 quadrants for the code enforcement, and what they discovered is the quadrant that was taking longer to respond to their code enforcement was receiving about 33% of the total volume of calls coming in, whereas another quadrant was receiving about 16%. Just knowing, what the volume levels were in those different quadrants helped the city realign boundaries so that they didn't necessarily have to hire more staff in the quadrant that wasn't responding as quickly, but rather shifted the boundaries so that they could respond to all in a timely manner. In Kansas City, one of the things that they did was they dug in deeper with the requests that were coming for mowing. And one of the things they ended up doing the one summer was adjusting their mowing schedules in their parks so that they could respond to those parks which had the highest frequency of use, and the parks that didn't have as many, they were able to do those less and stay within budget as a result of this, rather than just doing uniform mowing across every park. And then lastly, in Indianapolis and Marion County, their Department of Code Enforcement, which handles business licenses, took a look at the number of complaints that was coming in on a particular problem hotel property. They had enough data as a result of looking at this that they were able to decide not to renew that business license. And when they went back even further in looking at the data, one of the things that they were able to estimate is that they probably saved the police department in that city almost $500,000 annually in the amount of service runs that were going out to that particular property. So just an example of how some communities are really using this new data for some very sophisticated uses. So emergency response and recovery is another area where local governments are really using the 311 CRM data in new ways. Los Alamos County, New Mexico, had, when they first started up their 311 system, it was a result of the wildfires out there, and their council people were getting so many calls about people wanting to rebuild and what they needed to do for permits and things like that. They ended up establishing a 311 center in order to help them recover from the fires. And Rose, you're from New Mexico, and I believe last year when the area had fires again, 311 was a key player. Is that correct?
That's correct. They did broadcast public service announcements asking you to call 311 in Los Alamos. So folks were using that mechanism to know when to evacuate, when they could return back to their homes. So it was very largely publicized to support the effort of citizen communication as a result of last year's fires.
Okay. Going back to Minneapolis again, when the I-35 West Bridge collapsed, 311 was absolutely instrumental in taking the call load off of 911. They had life-threatening emergencies going on during that time period. The 311 was able to step in and provide information on where victims were being taken, in terms of hospitals in the area. They were able to coordinate donation of services. There were a lot of people that were divers that were volunteering to come in. These weren't true emergency phone calls, but they were calls that needed to be handled by the city, and 311 in Minneapolis really played an instrumental role in responding to that emergency. And then Fort Wayne, Indiana, this last summer, they had a really hot summer, as much of the U.S. did, but they used their 311 center to respond to the heat emergencies and provided information to citizens about where they could go for relief, where they could pick up fans, get water, all of those type of informational needs that citizens had during that time period. 311 is also used for community and economic development,
And again, for instance, Minneapolis is providing information about foreclosure assistance for homeowners. So if you call 311, there's a link to that information, so that can be provided to the citizen. Rancho Cucamonga, California promotes local businesses through 311. And as I said, one size does not fit all. Some cities choose not to promote local businesses or link to other sites to answer questions. But these sites, Rancho Cucamonga and Albuquerque, New Mexico, for instance, they do like to partner with other organizations so that they can support aspects like tourism. The city of Albuquerque won an award from the Albuquerque Business and Convention Center last year for their support of Albuquerque tourism. If you go to New York City, in the back of a taxi cab, you'll see little placards that ask you to call 311 for information. The same at the city of Chicago. In their taxi cabs, they promote 311. Some cities, you'll drive down the street and you'll see bumper stickers on the back of trucks that ask you to call in for various reasons. Call 311, and 311 is partnered with other organizations so that they can provide information. Very timely right now, the city of Denver, Colorado is providing information about elections. Yes, it's not always information that's contained in the city knowledge base, but they've developed ways to connect with the knowledge bases of other organizations so that they'll have up-to-the-minute information for citizens that might call in for information about those elections. So next we're going to transition to talking about steps in implementing 311, and we have a lot of robust information here. We're going to get started with Cory, who's going to kick off the first phase.
Okay. What I want to talk to you there is the very first column on the left, the assessment column, and talk to you about the steps that are involved in developing an assessment. Is your community ready for 311 or a centralized customer service system? And the first thing there is preparation, which is part of what you all are doing today by sitting in on a webinar and beginning the research to understand what 311 CRM systems are, what they look like, what they can do for your local government, and developing that deeper understanding. It's not just a matter of going out and buying the software, but rather doing the research and your homework first. Once you've gotten to that point where you feel like you think you want to proceed forward, then the next step is a kickoff meeting. You're going to want to secure buy-in from all of the service departments that are involved with this. They need to feel like they have a sense of ownership in the system and that they will see some benefits out of doing this. So a kickoff meeting to introduce the initiative and get people involved and excited about the new system is an essential step there. The next step there is system requirement review, and basically what you're doing is taking a look at your current IT structure and your current organizational structure and beginning to think about how they need to be formatted. So knowing what you have on hand. You're going to want to look at doing some data collection, finding out what volume of calls you're receiving right now, how many information requests versus how many service requests, how are calls coming in. One of the things Rose covered earlier today was the different kind of communication methods that we have. It's not just phone calls anymore. We're also having to deal with text, we're dealing with mobile applications. So how is information coming into your city and how is it being used? So you'll want to take a look at that and analyze that information, the next step. We also encourage you to do interviews and at all levels within your service department. So you're not wanting to talk to just the director of a service department, but also talk to the frontline people as well as middle management and get a sense of what they're feeling about 311 systems, what they know about systems, how they might be used. What you're wanting to do is really, in some sense, take the temperature of the organization to find out what kind of education needs to be done, where people are at with their thinking, because this really is a new way of doing business for an organization. Citizen focus groups are also helpful, bringing them in to help them understand what 311 CRM systems are and what kind of information they're needing from their local government can be helpful for you. Holding brainstorming and planning sessions, thinking about what this system could look like, how it would work with all of the different service departments within the organization, and then looking at the results and talking about what do you want to get out of a system. For some local governments, it's simply about enhancing the customer service experience for their citizens. For others, as we've just discussed, there's lots of other goals that they have, that they want to do better emergency response and disaster recovery, that they want to do more with performance measurement, that they want to do more with budgeting and resource allocation. So thinking about what you want to get out of the system is an important part of planning for this system. Rose, let me turn it back over to you.
Good, Cory. You've covered very effectively the what that we're trying to address. So what is centralized customer service for your city or county? And getting everyone on the same page about that what is very important. I don't know about your city, but I've been in cities where not everybody has the same idea about what centralized customer service looks like. What does it include? What should it exclude? What city service department should be included? What city service department should be excluded? How should we implement this? Should we phase this in a few services at a time? Is it by department? Is it by service? Some communities have done a big bang approach where they've gone live all at once. So on the very front end, using this assessment methodology that Cory has presented, you gain agreement on what the target is. What are we going to do for 311? And then you move on to developing tasks and responsibilities around the what. So that's the how part that we're talking about now. You need to address the people. Do you need more people? Where are you going to get those people? Are you going to hire from the outside? Are you going to move people from existing departments? How are you going to recruit those people if, in fact, you're going to recruit from the outside? A lot of questions to be answered in the people arena, including once you get those folks, how do you get them trained in customer service? How do you get them to develop an understanding of the city services department? Then the processes, looking at your processes, seeing which processes will stay with some of the departments, which will be accommodated by 311, service requests entered into the customer relationship management system, what information can be provided by 311 versus what information absolutely has to be provided back at the department. Process question. So we've covered people, process, then you have technology. Technology in terms of the customer relationship system that you need to have to be an enabler of 311. How are you going to get that? Are you going to go out to bid for that? That's likely. So we need to develop those requirements around the technology, not only the customer relationship management system, but the call center technology that supports a call center. Do you have existing technology that you can leverage in another small call center for the city? Or do you need to go out and procure all new technology to create a call center from the ground up? And then facility. Have you planned for 311? Do you have existing space? Or do you need to go out and get a new building or build a building or lease a floor or all of those options? So one size doesn't fit all. Some cities already had space. Some cities have built a little building. Some cities have leased space in another location. So those are all the tasks and responsibilities that need to be developed that support the information that came out of the assessment. Developing the timeline. Do you want, for budget purposes, to do this over 2 or 3 years, 5 years? What fits with your vision about implementing 311? And then once you have all of those questions answered, you can actually put a firm budget number to all of the plans that you've made around people, processes, technology, and facility. And you'll get your plan approved at that point before you then go out into the marketplace, issue an RFP for the technology or services that you might need, establish a project management office, and that's over in the last column. In order to manage all these moving pieces, you'll need a project management office, somebody to direct the activities, keep track of the tasks, the responsibilities, the meeting of deadlines, making sure it's organized so that what needs to come first is completed before the next phase is initiated. So a project management office is a good place to house those activities. Also, you will have quite a bit of organizational change, business transformation as we call it. So you need to plan for that change. That change will happen to you whether you plan for it or not, and you'll be more successful in implementing and meeting criteria if you've planned for that change. It includes process engineering, business process re-engineering, as some of the service requests are now being accommodated by a CRM at 311 instead of being worked maybe even manually or on Excel spreadsheet tracking devices in your departments. So quite a bit of re-engineering that needs to be thought through and documented as you're implementing 311. CRM, you select from a vendor your CRM. Then you need to have some training about how to configure that CRM. And finally, those customer service reps that are going to be citizen-facing, they'll need to be trained on how the CRM operates, how they can issue those service requests, track those, get the information that they need to respond to those citizen requests. And then, finally, but not the least, how are we going to communicate this change to our citizens? Are we going to have a big media event? What's the timing of that media event? Do we want to just be silent about this and let people find out? There's no right answer to that question. Again, it's part of your planning and implementation, and it's part of the vision that you create when you're doing that assessment. So we're going to conclude by saying Cory and I are both available to answer your questions at a later time. In addition to answering the questions that you submit today, you can find information about my company at heightsconsulting.org, and you can reach Cory through ICMA. They are our research partner, and they have a very robust information on their website about 311. Also, this presentation will be provided to you on LinkedIn, and our contact information for Cory and for me is also contained in this slide on LinkedIn. So finally, we'll open this up to any questions that you might have. I think I answered the question about the presentation. It will be posted on LinkedIn, and if you haven't joined us, if you'll go to LinkedIn, search on the 311 Synergy Group. It is open to cities, government entities, municipalities, leadership in a government organization, as opposed to, it is not open to the firms that support us, the vendors that support us. So join us on LinkedIn. The presentation will be out there, as well as a forum to do discussions about not only the startup of 311, but any other questions that you might have. So on the bottom right-hand side of your panel, there's a place to submit questions. If any of you have questions, Cory and I will answer those questions for you. And while we're waiting for some questions, Cory, do you have a few concluding remarks?
Oh, gosh. I am a huge believer in 311 CRM systems. I have seen them work in small communities as well as large cities all over the country and North America for that matter, and ICMA became involved with promoting the technology because we believe it's a best practice for local governments. I think it's a wonderful way to marry change management with technology and really see that this is going to continue to spread over the next decade or more.
Thank you, Cory. I had one question. Is there only one provider of 311, or how do you determine cost? Well, that's an excellent question and not an easy question to answer in terms of getting to a number. So you go through the process that Cory and I have described. First, you get your target. What is it that you want 311 to look like for you? And there's a lot of components that you need to list out so that you can get costs associated with that. As I talked about, you need to consider the people, the costs of the resources that will support 311, the processes. Do you need somebody to facilitate getting your processes in place? If that's the case, maybe you need some outside help, and there would be dollars associated with that. The technology. Do you have something in-house that you could use for your customer relationship management system? Or more likely, do you need to go out to bid and purchase something that will support your information, the knowledge base, the service request initiation and tracking? And then there are the costs associated with facility. As I said before, do you have an existing facility? What's it going to take to make that work for a new call center? Or do you actually have to, from the ground up, lease space, get cubicles, get the technology infrastructure in place? All of that would go into your planning and a final dollar amount that you would need to get approved to proceed with 311 centralized customer service. Cory, any thoughts on that?
No, but I'm looking ahead to the next question, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take that.
Please do.
Okay, somebody's responding. I've heard that Mayor Bloomberg is using 311 to handle requests for information during Hurricane Sandy. Has anyone heard from the impacted cities? I have not talked to anybody from New York City. I do know that the city of Philadelphia went to 24/7 operations and has been working nonstop since last Friday. So I know that the volume of calls that they're receiving, as well as the information that they're pushing out through social media channels, has been tremendous. And I know that Washington, D.C. was also going into preparatory work last Thursday and Friday, as were Boston and a number of the other 311 systems up and down the East Coast. So they have been instrumental in providing non-emergency information to people.
That's an excellent question. We've had presentations at the 311 Synergy Group in the past about the support, the City of Houston, Miami-Dade, for example, the support that they provided during hurricanes a few years ago, the same era as Katrina. So there's a lot of good information with fellow 311 practitioners about how they've supported their citizens during emergencies. And our past chairperson, Don Stickney, with Minneapolis, they were a tremendous help during the bridge collapse in terms of providing non-emergency information to their citizens.
Yeah. ICMA and the 311 Synergy Group, together with the COPS office at the U.S. Department of Justice, produced a multimedia toolkit on using 311 for disaster response and recovery. And if anybody's interested in having a free copy of that sent to them, just let me know after the conference or after the webinar.
If you happen to think of any questions after the conclusion of this webinar, just post them out on LinkedIn. If it's directed to Cory or I specifically, one or the other of us will answer, and if not, we'll both take a try at it. So that doesn't mean that this is your last opportunity to take a question. But we don't have any more questions submitted. So we will see you all in Tampa. It's going to be a wonderful meeting. We're planning just 2.5 days packed with information. And we'll see you on the next webinar. Not see you, but you'll see the presentation on December 12th at 10 o'clock Central. And always communicate with us via LinkedIn. Thank you, Cory, so much for the information that you provided today. We did have a request for the multimedia package, and the study that Cory referenced, you can download the information on the ICMA website, or if they'd like the whole multimedia package, Cory, can you provide that if they make the request to you?
Yeah, if they send me their address, I can ship them out a CD, or not a CD, I'm sorry, it's a DVD.
Cory did a wonderful job as our research partner. A lot of participation from the 311 Synergy Group. We had a lot of calls, information exchange, editing. There was a lot of effort, and the result is a wonderful package that all of you would benefit by receiving and learning from. So that's all for today, and we'll see you next month on December 12th for the next webinar. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.